All right.
How are you? Good to see you. Good morning, Steve.
Sorry, sir.
Sorry to go through here.
It's absolutely fine. I'm just like the way. It's my problem.
No.
Well, I believe that everyone has their plates, so we should get started. One of our members always said this is a breakfast, not a lunch. Or brunch, sorry, man. And some people need to go to work. But welcome, everyone. This is the community breakfast sponsored by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Celebration Committee. We've been doing this for a number of years, and once again, it's wonderful to see so many people out on a snowy, windy, cold morning. I wish he was born in July, but it didn't happen, so we're stuck with January 15th. This is a national holiday today, so some of you have to get to work, so we'll get you moving on. But thank you all for coming this morning today. The second time we did, I think we've been doing these practices for around 25 years. And the second one was a extremely snowy morning. We were in the Congregational Church that year. And we were looking at each other thinking, no one's going to show up. And it was wonderful because it was a packed house on that snowy morning in January. But we will start the program with some singing, some talking, some listening, some fellowship, and we're glad you're all here. We'll start with singing of Lift Every Voice and Sing. Isaac, you're going to lead that for us? Member of the committee, you stay there?
I'll belt it from here.
And words are in the program. Lift every voice and sing.
I hate to have you stand, but I probably should stand. Ready? Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun, let us march on till victory is won.
Thank you, Isaac. Now we have another Vanessa, you're on now. Your sister's joining you too, is that right? With the song Rise Up. Correct?
Yep.
You want to be up here so you can see it?
No, I won't be able to see it.
broken down and tired of living life on a merry-go-round, and you can't find the fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out and move mountains. We gon' walk it out and move mountains. And I'll rise up, I'll rise like the day, I'll rise up, I'll rise not afraid, I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. And I'll rise up, high like the waves, I'll rise up, in spite of the ache, I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. For you, for you, for you, for you. When the silence isn't quiet and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe, and I know you feel like dying, but I promise you will take the world to its feet and move mountains. Bring it to its feet. Move mountains. And I'll rise up, I'll rise like the day, I'll rise up, I'll rise not afraid, I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. For you, for you, for you, for you. All we need, all we need is hope. And for that we have each other. And for that we have each other. We will rise, so we will rise. We will rise. And I'll rise up, I'll rise like the day, I'll rise up in spite of the ache. I will rise 1,000 times again. And we'll rise up, high like the waves, we'll rise up, in spite of the ache, we'll rise up, and we'll do it 1,000 times again. For you, for you, for you, for you.
Thank you, Vanessa, and thank you, Karina and Isaac, for accompanying her. Okay, one thing I did forget in our welcome or greeting here, we do like to recognize those people who every day serve the community. We have some elected officials here. If they could stand right now, I would appreciate that. I believe we have them. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's more than that. 6, 7, 8, 9. All right. Thank you all for coming. And Sherry, do you want to say a few words to us? You know, they're the guests from Washington, D.C. too often. So thank you.
Welcome to say a few.
Sure.
You're coming up here.
Sure. Well,
Make you look short.
I can't yell that loudly. Well, happy Martin Luther King Day, everyone. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I was just telling Pam back there, we need to get you singing all over the place. Absolutely beautiful. And thank you for starting our morning out that way. Can I share just one quick story that I think is appropriate for today? If you remember just a couple years ago, it was the 50th anniversary of the march from Selma to Montgomery. I don't know if anybody remembers that, marking that 50th anniversary. For those of you who were alive when that was happening, when Martin Luther King marched from Selma to Montgomery in the name of voting rights and civil rights. And if you remember what happened as Martin Luther King and John Lewis and the others marching with them crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge and what they saw on the other side of that. And it became known as Bloody Sunday because literally Martin Luther King and John Lewis were beaten. Some folks were almost beaten to death. Well, I have the very, very good fortune of being able to serve in Congress with John Lewis.
Pretty cool.
It is literally every single one of us, and I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican, are in awe of the fact that we are serving in Congress with John Lewis. And I went down for that 50th anniversary march and was able to be with John Lewis and about 100 members of Congress to commemorate that. But I also think that it is a very important reminder of where we stand in society today. What they fought so hard for, what some people gave their lives for, what some people were beaten bloody for. And that was civil rights, equal rights, the right to vote. And my call out to every single one of you is that whether you vote Democratic or whether you vote Republican, if you are 18 years old or older, please vote. Did to get that right to vote. And on the other end of it, if you also think about people who today are trying to impede any kind of civil rights or equal rights or voting rights, all of us in this room need to stand up and fight that as well. I am more worked up on this than I've ever been worked up in my life. And I was raised in a home where my dad helped integrate the neighborhood where we lived. Where my dad, as a newspaper reporter in 1965, when Martin Luther King came to Springfield, Illinois, covered that march in Springfield. And I have never been worked up as much as I am today. And I don't want to get overly political, but be involved. Vote. And if you see something wrong, speak out. Thanks, everybody. Happy Martin Luther King Day.
Thank you, Representative. One of the activities of the Celebration Committee, in addition to putting together the breakfast, and today, again, many thanks to the personnel here at First Lutheran, is we do an essay contest with middle schoolers. We provide a prompt to them. We encourage the schools to participate. And some years we get a whole lot, and some years we don't. This year we had a whole lot from one of the schools. It was wonderful. The prompt this year was built upon the celebration of 2017 being the 50th anniversary of Thurgood Marshall's ascension to the Supreme Court. It was a radical event at the time. It shouldn't have been, but it was. He was a man who I looked up to greatly as I was growing up. So it was an honor to have the students respond to what influence Thurgood Marshall had upon us. So we have the finalists, the second place and the first place finalists, will read their essays to us today. So we'll start with the second place reading, Nayana Crochet.
Thurgood Marshall was an important person in history. He changed the way that we all looked at who could be on the Supreme Court. On October 7, 1967, he became the first African American to be on the Supreme Court. The Jim Crow law was happening at the time, so it was amazing. This was a huge accomplishment and history that we will never forget. Let's start all the way back to the beginning of his life. He was born on July 2, 1908, in Baltimore, Maryland. His grandfather was a grocery store owner. His mother was a kindergarten teacher, and his father was a grandson of a slave. He worked at an all-white exclusive country club. Marshall attended Baltimore's Colored High and Training School that was later named Frederick Douglass High School. He was an above-average student. He also was a troublemaker, so his teacher's punishment for him was to memorize the United States Constitution. After graduating high school, he went to Lincoln College, which was in Pennsylvania. He married his first wife, Buster, in 1925. A few years later, in 1930, he graduated from Lincoln College. He applied to the University of Maryland Law School, but he was rejected because of his race. Instead of Maryland, he then attended law school in Washington, D.C. at Howard University. Charles Houston, his professor, helped him practice and study to become a lawyer. He graduated from Howard University, first in his class. Some people who affected Thurgood Marshall was his mom. She would push him to be the best that he could be. Also, his high school teacher made him memorize the Constitution for his punishment when he got in trouble. This is what inspired him to become a lawyer. He then liked what the Constitution said and spoke for it. His most important decision was going to Howard University to become a lawyer. Also, most importantly, he decided to become a lawyer in the first place. He overcame racism and doubt. Lots of people told him he would never make his dreams come true. Also, some people didn't like him because of the color of his skin, but that didn't stop him one bit. He never judged anyone based on the color of his skin, because he knew that most of the people were good people. After he got out of college, he became a local lawyer for the NAACP. His first case was Murray v. Pearson case in January of 1936. Later in the year, he moved to New York City to work for full-time for the NAACP. Over the decades, he argued and won a variety of cases, put down many varieties of legalized racism. This helped inspire the American Civil Rights Movement that happens later. His first victory for the Supreme Court was the Chambers v. Florida case. He defended 4 African Americans who had been accused of murder. Another Supreme Court victory was in 1944 for the case of Smith v. Allwright, which they put down the Democratic Party's use of white-only primary elections in multiple southern states. In 1950, he won 2 more cases, Sweat v. Painter and McLaurin v. Oklahoma. But one of the most important cases that he handled was Brown v. the Board of Education. Later, on February 11, 1955, his wife Buster sadly died from cancer. He then remarried Cecilia Sweat in December of 1955. He had 2 children with Cecilia, whose names were Thurgood Jr. and John. 1 decade later, John F. Kennedy appointed Marshall to the U.S. Court of Appeals, which was another racial first. 2 years later, he got appointed to the U.S. Supreme Court by Lyndon B. Johnson in July of 1967. He finally agreed and came in on October 1st, 1967, which made him officially the first African American to become a member of the Supreme Court. While he was on the Supreme Court, President Nixon and Reagan altered the court's point of view because of new people. While on the court, he wanted to uphold positive gender and racial actions in every case where they were challenged. He succeeded in putting new protections under the law for women, children, prisoners, and the homeless. But due to his poor health, he retired for a seat in 1991. Finally, he sadly died on January 24, 1993, at the age of 84. In his whole lawyer career, before the Supreme Court, he argued 32 cases, winning 29 of them. I think that we can all agree that he was an inspiring and amazing man. He brought us hope that the world will change for the better, and that everyone will be equal one day. That we can accomplish great things, but only if we put our minds to it. This world will be united one day, but we just need to take it one step at a time. Thank you for reading this, and thank you to Thurgood Marshall for changing the world for the better.
Okay, you adjust the mic for yourself. There you go. Thank you.
Words are often viewed as powerless. People think that if it's easy to say, it should be easy to understand. That isn't always the case. A word isn't just a word. A word can be like the door to our souls, inner thoughts, and our history. Our history is what makes us who we are. One word in particular truly opens such a door into the history of our great nation. That word is justice. Justice simply means to be morally right, and that's why I am here, to talk to you about someone who is morally right. Thurgood Marshall was the first African American to serve as a Supreme Court justice. Marshall embodied freedom, righteousness, and justice. Thurgood Marshall was born on July 2nd, 1908, to a middle-class family in Baltimore, Maryland. As a kid, his mother worked as a kindergarten teacher. He knew from the start that education was important. His father, on the other hand, was a railroad porter. Every day after work, his father would stand outside of the courthouse and listen to cases. Then he'd come home and talk about them to Thurgood and his siblings. They had many court-like arguments together. That is probably why Thurgood Marshall became a lawyer. Thurgood Marshall was undeniably a hard worker. However, he faced many challenges on the road to success. He was rejected from the University of Maryland just because of his race. He didn't take the hit too hard, though, because he saw the effects of segregation growing up. So instead of the University of Maryland, he attended law classes at Howard University. He graduated from Howard at the top of his class, and he immediately went on to work for a local law firm. Though Marshall went through some rough times, he still had many accomplishments. He graduated college with honors. He was in the Supreme Court for 24 years. He was the director of the Legal Defense and Education Fund, and he won nearly 30 court cases before he was appointed a Supreme Court justice. These cases included Murray versus Pearson, where he began a long string of cases against segregation. Or, of course, Brown versus the Board of Education, where he helped to desegregate schools. In my opinion, Marshall's greatest impact on the United States was Smith versus Albright. In 1940, an African-American resident in Texas was petitioning against the fact that people of color weren't allowed to vote. This caught the attention of Thurgood Marshall. In 1944, the issue was taken to court. Texas's voting laws didn't allow people of color to vote in major elections. Marshall, who was 36 at the time, helped change these laws. It impacted the entire country because people were beginning to realize that everyone is equal. I think that this was his greatest accomplishment because it was a change for one state that made a huge difference for our country. Separate but equal isn't the way the world needs to be. Instead, we need to be equal as one because labels shouldn't matter. Whether you're African American or Caucasian, whether you're a Christian or a Muslim, whether you're heterosexual or homosexual, the only thing that should matter is that we are all people. As a student, I think that Thurgood Marshall was truly an inspiration for us all. I believe that everyone deserves a chance to make a mark on the world, just as Marshall did just that. He was one of the most incredible people in the civil rights movement, and he deserves to be recognized just as much as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. They say that heroes aren't born but made. This man was an exception. Thurgood Marshall was born to be in the Supreme Court, and he was born to make a difference in the world. Every morning we say the Pledge of Allegiance. The words "with liberty and justice for all" mean so much more than anyone can comprehend. Next time you say the Pledge of Allegiance, think about all of the people that made those words true. Think about the people who redefined what it means to be an American.
Well, no one here should leave not knowing who Thurgood Marshall is. We all should. Thurgood who? No. Okay. At this time, we're going to move to our keynote address. There's a very short biography provided during the program. comes to us as a leader, an educator, a trainer, and a former member of the Martin Luther King Celebration Committee. That should be the top of his resume. And I didn't see it included there, Tony. But you'll learn now. But please join us in welcoming back to Galesburg, Tony Franklin.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Maury always has to try to get that last dig in, but he owes it to me. I kind of got here a little bit last minute, and he had to take care of a little bit of snow this morning, and couldn't leave the house without shoveling some sidewalks and that kind of stuff. But I had to take care of business. But it is great to be back home. I'm originally out of West Virginia, but I consider Galesburg to be our home. I have my lovely wife here to read with me this morning. So this is not her normal time of day to be up and about. So I really truly appreciate her presence here. But I also want to take this opportunity to thank Brother Dwight White and the Martin Luther King Celebration Committee for inviting me here this morning to be a part of the celebration. I remember being here, I think about 2008, I believe. That was the year we lost our daughter. It was a tough time being in front of you because I didn't know if I had enough in me to do it. But you all gave me the courage to stand in front of you to bring that message. I also want to take this opportunity to dedicate this morning's message to my friend, my confidant, my former pastor, John Sibley.
Yes, sir.
It's hard to come into Galesburg and not to see him, but I just hope this will make him proud. Give me a moment. Last year, my daughter that lives out in Brookings, South Dakota, sent me a notice to let me know my grandson that was 8 years old at the time was going to be receiving an award at the city council. And I said, my goodness. I said, I wish I could be there. This is like 900 miles away. But anyway, Bryce received an award for a poster that he drew, and the title of his poster read, "The time is right to do the right thing." Don't be a bully, he said. Be nice, be kind to everyone. He said you should do right even if no one is looking. How profound of a statement is that from an 8-year-old? We can learn so much from our children. I appreciate the messages from our award winners of the essay awards. I learned some new things about Thurgood Marshall I didn't know. So thank you for the education. You both are awesome. Before I get into my talk, I want to talk about my cultural awakening. I left West Virginia and moved to South Dakota. I grew up in a very racist part of West Virginia. My town had about 4,000 people and 3 stoplights. In that community, black and white issues were always going on. When you walk down the sidewalk, someone would call you the N-word. If you walk down one side of the sidewalk, someone would either be spitting on the ground to let you know signs of disapproval. When I had so much bitterness in my heart at that time in my life that I didn't know if I would ever like white people. And I'm telling you straight out that I've been on a journey. And this cultural awakening for me has been something I want to share with you. When I moved from West Virginia, moved to South Dakota, and worked on the reservation, and all of a sudden I saw something different. I was able to take the focus off of me and look at another group of people that were being very oppressed. And I said, I have a whole lot of opportunities that at the time I didn't even realize. When I saw my brothers and sisters out on the reservation struggling and oppressed and the conditions in which they were living, the school systems, I said, my goodness, Tony. He said, why are you so much worried about you and being black, and here other people are suffering? That was an opportunity for me to see the difference that I need to take the chip off of my shoulder and be able to step up and help other people. And it's not always about me. And if you can't get anything else out of today's message, try to move away from thinking about yourself and think about what you can do for somebody else. Okay?
All right, sir.
I'm going to share just a few headlines. I didn't go real deep in it. You've been reading the newspaper just like me. A few headlines over 2000 last year read, "What I Saw in Charlottesville." The news media offers consistently warped portrayals of black families and studies finds. Why race relations got worse, this one poll. One poll says 57% say race relations in the United States are bad. News about politicians who are sexual offenders. Colin Kaepernick refuses to stand for the national anthem. In Brookings, South Dakota, 2 months ago, where my daughter lives, on the garage door of a black woman's home, it said, "Dead blank, in." I don't like to use the word, but this is 2017. This happened in 2018, just several months ago. But I'm here to tell you that we need to be about making change. Now is the time, as my grandson said. Now is the time, as Martin Luther King said. Why do we have so many organizations that hire so few minorities? Why are we our incarceration rates of minorities 5 times greater than whites? Why are women paid less? Now is the time for us to pay attention to our communities that we live in, and we can increase what I'm referring to as our justice quotient. Our justice quotient. And basically this measures the concepts that one would find in normal rights-based communities for managing conflict. Basically it's one that says that the level of your engagement in making civil rights, human rights, and our unalienable rights are being afforded to everyone, regardless of our race, our color, our creed, our socioeconomic status, or any other difference that we may have, military status, all of those need to be part of that. We need to think about what someone just heard earlier, that life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, that everyone is afforded those same opportunities. It's our time to switch from playing offense, or playing defense, to playing offense. And by doing that, we need to become drum majors for justice. We need to be about righteousness. And I'm going to share a few scriptures, which I can't stand up here in a church without sharing some scriptures.
All right, sir.
All right. Reverend came before the doctor.
That's right. The
Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. So just some words from the Bible that talks about justice, and justice is spoken in the word quite a bit. But in Isaiah 1:17 it says, "It is the Lord who commands us, seek justice, rescue the oppressed, defend the orphan, and plead for the widow." In Micah 6:8 it says, "What does the Lord require of you but to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly before our God?" We have t-shirts at the church I'm at now that have that right on the front of the t-shirt with a little hashtag sign. I used to call that a number sign. Now they call it a hashtag. That's how old I am. Amos 5:24, "Let justice roll like a river, righteous like a never-failing stream." Isaiah 30:18, "The Lord longs to be gracious to you, therefore he will rise up to show you compassion. For the Lord is a God of justice. Blessed are all who wait for him." And then Zechariah 7:9, "Administer true justice, show mercy and compassion to one another." You can't legislate goodness, and you cannot pass a law to force someone to respect you. The only way to social justice in capitalist country is through economic parity and ownership. If you don't recognize that, came from Dr. King. Injustice occurs when power is misused to take from others what God has given them, namely their life, dignity, liberty, and the fruits of their love and labor. Justice is doing for others what we want done for us. In a beloved community, and I'm going to coin this, my friend here, Richard Stout, when we were at Knox College, we had a program called the Beloved Community. And it was Rich Stout that came to me and said, "We need to do a program like this." And it was because of his effort that made that happen. But let's hear about this beloved community. In the beloved community, Dr. King shared a global vision in which all people can share in the wealth of the earth, where poverty, hunger, and homelessness will not be tolerated. Racism in all forms of discrimination, bigotry, and prejudice will be replaced by an all-inclusive spirit of sisterhood and brotherhood, where disputes will be resolved by peaceful and conflict resolution and reconciliation with our adversaries instead of using military power. In his 1963 sermon, Love Your Enemies, published in his book, Strength to Love, Dr. King addresses the role of unconditional love. Love and struggling for the beloved community. With every ounce of our energy, we must continue to rid this nation of the incubus of segregation. We shall not, in the process, relinquish our privilege and our obligation to love. While abhorring segregation, we shall love the segregationists. This is the only way to create the beloved community. Now it is time to create that beloved community. And I hope that everyone here can be a part of that process. Love and trust will triumph over fear and hatred. Peace and justice will prevail over war and military conflict. Now is the time for us to advocate for justice. I like this term that says we need to learn how to love the hate out of people.
All right.
Love the hate out of people. All right? Love has much more power. Love is typically great until you are asked to love someone you don't like. When you ask to love somebody you don't like, then you give us a test of whether you know how to love or not. Dr. King calls us to a radical act of love. Now is the time to destroy the barrier that's dividing us, the wall of hostility that's between us. Maya Angelou tells us that if you find it in your heart to care for somebody else, you have succeeded, unquote. Who is our neighbor? People around this room, look around the room. These are your neighbors. Does everyone look like you? No. Does everyone think like you? No. Oh, wouldn't have my speech.
Yes.
I'm not going to hit the podium now. I'm not. So, before you can love others, we always talk about you have to love yourself first. And if you can't love you can't love anybody else. And that's where it has to start within yourself. But love thy neighbor as thyself. And our neighbors are the Muslims. They are the poor. They are those that those that may not have the same amount of wealth as us. But those are our neighbors. And when we walk past our neighbors, and even the homeless people on the street, and we don't see them as our neighbors and people that we're supposed to have compassion for, we are missing the mark. Right. You must be willing to confess and admit your own biases. I'm getting personal now. That preventing, and so we can cross these cross relations. It's got to cross the cultural divides. How can we cross over and learn about some other culture? My experience on the reservation, a little black kid out of West Virginia, thought I knew it all. Then I went out there and all of a sudden I'm seeing a whole different world. When you travel abroad, you see the same experience. You go to different parts and just go through different places in the United States, you can see that same experience. Verne Myers, she's a lawyer, entrepreneur. She's also an author and a cultural motivator, innovator. She wrote a book that says How to Move from Well-Meaning to Well-Doing. And if you get a chance, I would encourage you to go to her TED Talk. And she has a TED Talk that talks about how to overcome our biases. And we all have these biases to keep us from interacting with each other. And if we can't break those barriers down, we will continue to be a separate society. We will not be unified as a community. When we see something wrong, we need to stand up. Vernon Myers tells us that we need to get out of denial. We need to walk toward our discomfort, not to walk away from it when things get uncomfortable. When I get into a meeting and things get ugly, I walk away. I don't go back. That doesn't help anything. I need to lean back in. I need to lean into the discomfort. Because the more you go into it and you're uncomfortable, you become comfortable. When I was the only black kid in my kindergarten class, there was two of us. Yeah, there was a couple of us in there. But it was a lot of times I was the only one. But the more I got there, the more comfortable I became. Don Moffitt knows I used to go to the Farm Bureau meetings. Didn't too many people there look like me, did it, Don? I don't think so. But the Farm Bureau meeting, but I kept going back and and it wasn't just me getting more comfortable, but the people around me became more comfortable. So we have to seek those opportunities. But don't always think that someone like me has to be the one to invite you. Be like Richard Stout, the guy that came to my office when I was in Knox College and said, Tony, I want to get to, he didn't, I don't know if he said I want to get to know you, but after that, we've been friends all these years, over 20 years now. The friendships I've developed, the Jim Riches of the world, the Jim Jacobs of the world, the Cesar Cutis of the world, the Sal Garzas and all those. These people, these aren't black people. But these are my friends. These are my neighbors. And I thank them for being my friends. I know a lot more people, so I don't hope to leave nobody out. So. Regina Hodge. Amen. What is it, though, that prevents you from developing close relationships with people from other cultures, other ethnicities, other sexual orientations, age, or socioeconomic status? What are you holding on to? Is it fear? Does it have to do anything with you feeling uncomfortable when you get in those situations? Or are you afraid you might offend somebody? Some people say, well, I don't like to go talk to such and such because I might offend them. Yeah, that's okay, but when you offend them, you can always get it right. I can read the body language on somebody and say, okay, I know if I said something wrong, I can correct it at that moment. Oh, I'm sorry, did I say something that offended you? I really didn't mean that. Can you help me understand what it was that I said that made you feel that way, and we can have a dialogue? It's not always about what I think is right. It's a Korean pastor, theologian, that I read a book. It's talking about cross-cultural churches. But he says something very neat. He says, our ability to move beyond our differences and conflicts rests in our ability to deal with the differences and conflicts in our past as well as in our present. Otherwise, we are merely sweeping reality and history under the rug to feel comfortable in our ignorance. Isn't that strong? But we must learn again how to lean into discomfort, meaning to walk toward it instead of away, attempt to and accept responsibility for our own behaviors, and be flexible and open for other differences. Encourage one another to build up each other. Now is the time for us to start to love each other. Now is the time for us to care for each other. Now is the time for us to show compassion for each other. Agape love, unconditional love, is at the core of the quest of the beloved community. This requires a level of cultural intelligence. Everybody likes to be intelligent, but are you intelligent in this area of culture? That can be nurtured by intentional and deliberate cross-cultural dialogue. And I'm going to say that again. We have to be deliberate and intentional about having these conversations. I can't keep walking away from people. There's somewhere in your life where you need to start having that conversation. When you look around and say, have I ever invited a black person to my house? Have I ever invited such and such to go to a movie with me? Have I ever had a close enough relationship to go hang out with somebody at a ball game that's different than me? Can I develop those kind of friendships and forge those friendships? We must be willing to engage in courageous conversations around topics like poverty, racism, inequality, sexism, homophobia, ageism. And according to Professor Sanjay Rao, cultural intelligence requires creating an environment that will allow for connection and understanding to occur. It is the willingness to seek understanding from a perspective beyond one's own limited worldview. My worldview when I left West Virginia was West Virginia. That's not very broad, especially that little town I was in. It requires the willingness to go to another place and to reflect upon your own culture and to see the culture of others from a different angle. It requires you to remove our cultural blinders. Get those blinders off. There's something more out there. Get the chip off your shoulder like I had to. It requires a sense of empathy, meaning the power to understand and share the feelings of another. Or should I say, that old thing about walk them out of my moccasins to see what my life is like before you start judging who I am. Who is in your cultural circle? Who do you have in your cultural circle? Who are those people? Congressman and Civil Rights Leader John Lewis states, I heard Dr. Martin Luther King say on many occasions, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. He says, I still believe we can get there. We will redeem the soul of America. In doing so, we will inspire people around the world to stand up and speak out. He goes on to say, I tell friends and family and colleagues, and especially young people, that when you see something that's not fair, if you see something that's not right, you have to do something. You have to speak up, and you have to get in the way. And this is coming from Congressman Lewis. Now is the time to stand up, reject passivity, stand up for justice, stand up for equality, stand up for righteousness. Now is the time to speak up. Now is the time to speak out. Now is the time to get rid of what I refer to as silent collusion. When we stand around and hear things, we don't say anything. That's means silent collusion. We're being silent. And when we're being silent, we're saying that we agree with what the other person's saying, even though you may not agree, because you don't have the guts or the courage to speak out.
That's right.
We need to all be a part of this process. And if you can't be a player in the game, get back on the bench. No, I won't be that hard. I'm sorry. I'll put that back in my lips here. But now is the time to defend the rights of others. Dr. King quotes, says, justice too long delayed is justice denied. He goes on to say, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. How can we lend a voice or platform to our privilege? Let us develop a kind of, we call it dangerous unselfishness. A dangerous unselfishness. It's not all about me. It's about what I can do for my brother and sister, my fellow brothers and sisters. Dr. King referred to a very familiar parable in his I've Been on the Mountaintop speech. And he took out the parable of the Good Samaritan. And he talks this, and let me just share this with you as I close. He says, let us develop a kind of dangerous unselfishness. One day, a man came to Jesus, and he wanted to raise some questions about some vital matters of life. At points, he wanted to trick Jesus and show him that he knew a little bit more than Jesus knew, to throw him off base. Now, the question would have easily ended up as a philosophical, theological debate, but Jesus immediately pulled the question from midair and placed it on this dangerous curve around Jerusalem, Jericho. And he talked about a certain man who fell among the thieves. You remember that a Levite and a priest passed by one another. They didn't stop to help him. They passed by somebody who needed help and didn't even help him. And finally, a man of another race came by. He got down from his beast, decided not to be compassionate by proxy, but he got down with him and administered first aid, helped a man in need, and Jesus ended up saying, this was a good man. This was a great man. And I'm going to add, this was a just and righteous man. Now is the time to stop and help our fellow man. Now is the time to be an ally for social justice. A truly compassionate attitude toward others does not change, even if we behave negatively or hurt you. So let me say this is Dalai Lama. This is not Tony Franklin. Dalai Lama says, a truly compassionate attitude toward others does not change, even if they behave negatively or hurt you. So even somebody that spit in my face or spit on the ground when I walk by, I still have to love that person. I had to get to the point where I had to start loving people and praying for people that dislike me. Otherwise, I'll just turn myself up from the inside out. The beloved community, we must, in order to have this and create it, we must work collaboratively in eliminating the isms that plague our communities. We must be intentional, courageous, and willing to become an ally for justice. And I like to quote from Jack Levin. He says, liberty and justice for all. Justice is not static, it is active. We must actively take a stance and be a watchguard for justice every day. And one of my favorite King's quotes is this: if we can't learn to live together as brothers, we will perish as fools. Mm-hmm. And I still believe that one day mankind will bow down before the altars of God and be crowned triumphant over war, bloodshed, and nonviolent redemptive goodwill will proclaim the rule of the land. I still believe that we shall overcome. If you don't recognize that, it's Dr. King again. Now is the time for us to step out of our comfort zones, to forge new, authentic relationships and friendships with people different than ourselves. Dr. King says we must learn and grow and profit from the wisdom of the brothers and sisters who are called in our opposition. Doing justice includes not only doing the righting the wrongs, but generosity and social concern, especially toward the poor and the vulnerable. If you're not making change, you are accepting it. If you're not a part of helping make change, you're just sitting here accepting it. And as we move forward, I say now is the time to step up and do something. Don't walk away from from year to year and go back to the same mess. I know a lot of good things are going on in the community. I heard about Heart and Soul. David Amor, I saw he got these, United Against Hate. And they got these posters, and the poster says, hate has no home here. I got a poster from Galesburg, took it all the way back to Urbana and put it on my front yard. And now after I put mine up, all of a sudden I noticed somebody across the street put one up. So we can be a change agent.
Yes, sir.
I pray that this message motivates each one of us to find what I'm referring to as your inner king. Think about what Dr. King stood for. We all have an inner king. And whatever that part of him that you want to connect with, put that into action. But don't walk around being passive. Don't be that silent person and letting people keep saying things that you know aren't right and you don't say a word. I got one story I want to share with you before I close. I was at a conference doing a presentation, and it was dealing with biases. And a young white girl came up to me, a young girl, beautiful little girl with blue eyes. She goes, I just came away from my Thanksgiving dinner, and she said, my son got in line to go to dinner. And they told him he had to stand back because the white people had to go first. Her son was multi-ethnic. And it was at that point when she realized that she had to speak out in that family. And she made them know that her son would not be stepping back. And she went on to find out that people in her family, that some of them were Klan members, and that one was a Grand Wizard. She just let me know. And so we had this quick conversation after the workshop because that stimulated her to have some courage. But she already had spoken out, but she wanted to share the story. That's the kind of courage it takes. And I know, I hate to say that it can break up families, but there's certain things that I don't stand, that I don't like, and people know I don't like. Even when people cuss in front of me, I let them know. I'll walk away. I don't like that kind of language. But we have to stand up for something, or we'll fall for anything. So with that story, I wish you the best. God bless everyone. And like I say, now is the time, people. Now is the time to create the beloved community of Galesburg. Thank you.
Recognize those people who brought us this lovely meal today. Can the kitchen people please step out for a second? Come on. Thank you all very much. Thank you, members of the church community for providing us. Okay. Tony mentioned another activity happening in the community going on, and I've asked the committee's asked David to speak about that for us today. A few words here. Thank you.
Before I begin, wasn't that a great speech? Wasn't that powerful? Thank you, Tony. I'm very grateful to be asked by the Martin Luther King Celebration Committee to say a few words about United Against Hate. We're the new kid on the block in Galesburg. We've just been an organization that's been around for a little less than a year. And we're in good company with the NAACP and all sorts of other groups that have been working for social justice for a very long time in our community. I'm especially grateful to be asked to speak to you on a day when we honor the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. King fought in a loving and courageous way and ultimately gave his life for the dignity and worth of all human beings, and we've heard very eloquently about that. His efforts were quite appropriately centered on the civil and voting rights struggles of the African American community to help right the centuries-long wrongs of oppression and discrimination. But his vision was broad enough to reach out to encompass rice farmers in Vietnam, as we know from his late speeches, municipal workers in Memphis, and poor people of every race and creed. And his message of the indissolubility of love and justice continues to inspire all of us who work for social justice, even 50 years. This will be 50 years in 2018 after his death. United Against Hate was formed in response to the wave of hate speech and hate crimes and incivility that broke out during and after the last presidential election campaign and has unfortunately continued in our nation since then. Our fundamental goal is simple. It's to push back against that hate with the goal of rallying our community to reject it and to prevent it from being seen as normal. We want Galesburg and Knox County to say, no, this is not who we are, this is not acceptable. Many of you in this room were there at Temple Shalom 11 months ago when we had our first meeting. There was a moving turnout from across the community that demonstrated that this call resonated with a great many people. Since then, United Against Hate has continued to meet. We focused our efforts in two areas. First, we have a working group that has been working with the superintendent of schools to address concerns, start to have a conversation about bullying, incivility, and lack of respect for diversity in our schools. We know nationwide that most of the documented hate incidents have in fact been occurring in schools. And that conversation is ongoing. The second initiative is broader. It's to try to foster a truly united community here in Galesburg, one that is open and welcoming to all people. Immigrants, documented and undocumented, people of color, members of the LGBTQ community, and all other groups that face discrimination. As part of that initiative and in cooperation with other organizations, we've petitioned the city and the county to issue proclamations to go on record officially to affirm that we are a welcoming community that rejects all hate and incitement, and we have reason to believe that both the city and the county will be moving forward with those. In addition, we have co-sponsored public events such as the vigil last summer to protest the Charleston March and the unfortunate loss of life at that time. Speaking of which, I'd like to encourage everyone here to turn out next Saturday at the courthouse at 10 o'clock for a March to the Polls. The Indivisible group here in Galesburg has been organizing that. United Against Hate is supporting that. One of the crucial things we heard from Representative Bustos, one of the crucial things we have to do to combat the kind of hate that has been happening in our community is to make sure that everybody understands the importance of coming out to vote this year. To defeat those haters, I think, again, I would say with her, people in both parties, to make sure that is not the kind of voice that is represented in our halls of government. Finally, United Against Hate is building on the work of Pam Gaither, a local person, and we're distributing the Hate Has No Home Here yard signs that you've probably seen going up around town. These signs are a quiet but powerful way to signal that Galesburg is a welcoming community that rejects hatred and discrimination. As we see here, I've brought some yard signs with me. Our cost for those was $5 a piece. I would be happy to sell them or to give to anybody who would like to have one of those signs. You can see me afterwards. In closing, if you'd like to become part of our group, you can easily get on our email list, or we have a Facebook page. Contact me or any of the other people. I wonder if I can ask the people who are active in United Against Hate who are here, just to raise their hands, because there are many of you here today. And you can talk to any of those people as well. So thank you very much for your attention. I'm honored to be able to speak to you tonight. Thank you.
Well, we want to make sure this isn't tonight, so we can get you out of here in a few minutes. The next piece on the program is a little more music from another county board member, Pam Davidson. Pam?
Sung at the United Against Hate. So hold on just a little while longer. Hold on just a little while longer. just a little while longer. Pray on, just a little while longer. Pray on, just a little while longer. Everything is gonna be alright, 'cause he has the whole world in his hand. He's got the whole world in his hand. He has the whole world in his hand. He's got the whole world in his hand. He's got the little bitty baby in his hands. He's got the little bitty baby in his hand. He's got the little bitty baby in his hand. He's got the whole world in his hand.
You're leading us in the next song. And you're leading us in the next song.
Okay, could everybody stand? This is our closing before. Could everybody please join hands? We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We're going to go to the last one. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday.
Vice versa.
Before the pastor, there is some envelopes on everyone's tables. We, as this committee, we are a small committee, and the things that we do, we also give to scholarships. And the monies that we raise helps gives awards to our essay winners and our scholarships. If anyone would like to donate over and above what you give for your ticket, please fill out one. We really appreciate it, because this event is our community event. It's for everybody, but it also helps our Trinity community. So thank you, and thank you so much for coming.
Greetings, brothers and sisters. I'm here to do a benediction, but we've all been challenged today, and you should leave here challenged. If everybody in your circle looks like you, there's a problem. We've all been challenged. Step outside of your comfort zone. I stand here and represent a denomination that is over 231 years old. If you think about that, that's pretty profound, because in 1787, it wasn't culturally acceptable for me to be standing up here and this be an integrated group. So we must continue on and move forward. Let us close out. May the grace of God and the sweet communion of his Holy Spirit rest, rule, and abide with us all now, henceforth, and forevermore, until we can come together again in love. In Jesus' name, amen. Go in peace.
Thank you for joining us. Have a lovely day.